I could swing between periods of highs and lows rather quickly.
A wife and mother struggles with bipolar disorder.
I was never going to get better. I'm unfit. I'm unqualified. I'm not a good wife.
See how she's miraculously healed. Plus, the ugly side of sex trafficking.
My stepfather was the trafficker, and it began at the age of 12.
See how churches and law enforcement are working together to stop it. That and more on today's 700 Club Interactive. Well, welcome to the show. An Alabama man who set out to mow lawns for veterans in all 50 states, well, he's achieved his goal. Rodney Smith Jr., founder of Raising Men Lawn Care, was inspired to begin his free mowing service in 2015 after seeing an elderly man cutting his lawn. That morphed into a mission to cut grass for veterans in every state.
Rodney drove across the country taking photos with state signs as he cut lawns for vets. Delta Airlines flew Rodney to Alaska and Hawaii so he could complete his mission to serve in all 50 states. Rodney's also had over 300 kids accept his 50-yard challenge, committing to cut 50 lawns for free for the elderly, disabled, single moms, and veterans in their communities. He says it's all God, saying, even before this all even happened, I remember asking God to use me as his vessel. He didn't give me an answer the day that I asked him, not a month later, not even a year later. It happened a few years later, and this would be that day.
What
a wonderful idea.
Great idea and great execution. And boy, you really have to stick with it to say, I'm going to do all 50 states.
Yeah.
And thanks to Delta for making Alaska and Hawaii
that's
happen.
pretty special. That's wonderful. Well, we have another great story for you. Imagine finding out that your entire debt was paid off by a group of strangers. For nearly 2,000 people across 4 West Michigan counties, that dream has become a reality. Take a look.
Nearly $2 million paid in full by the not-for-profit organization RIP Medical Debt through donations from Grand Rapids First Church.
And I just happened to be one time in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, and I saw this church about a little over a year or so ago where they had canceled out some medical debt for people. And I wondered, how did they do that? And so as I began to investigate, we got connected with the organization that helped them.
Pastor Sam revealed the news during Sunday's church service, and at first, the congregation didn't know what to make of it.
I told him I had a special announcement, and we had already allocated dollars set aside through our missions and our benevolence program to do this. And so I was going to tell them we were going to do this, and at first they didn't quite register. It was because nobody does this kind of thing. They just didn't register with them, and finally they started realizing what we did, and they started clapping, and then people started standing.
This donation gifted to random Michiganders abolishing their crippling medical debt with no strings attached.
I thought, what an incredible way to show people who feel so burdened down, and most of these people that they selected are at poverty level, that RIP Medical selects are at poverty level, and then to have this medical debt that you cannot control come on your life, and then someone is hounding you to pay it, and you know there's no way to pay it. When we saw that opportunity and thought, boy, we could really alleviate a burden.
And for the thousands of unknown recipients, Pastor Sam shares this heartfelt message.
What I'd really like them to realize is when you thought everybody forgot you, you weren't forgotten. God didn't forget you. And his people didn't forget you.
That's a message for all of us. God didn't forget you. His people didn't forget you. We're going to step in and pay your debt. What an incredible witness.
Yes.
What an incredible thing to do for people to say, I'm going to love the stranger, people I don't even know. I'm going to help them in the middle of their difficulty. Boy, hats off to you.
Can you imagine the day that that announcement arrives in the mail, what it's like? Party time. I mean, really, you know.
You might even get me to dance on that one.
That's great.
Well, speaking of life-changing moments, country singer Jody Messina recently shared that Jesus visited her front porch while she was in the midst of battling cancer. And that visit totally changed her life.
The 48-year-old mom of two who has 6 #1 country singles not only found herself struggling physically, but also mentally when she and her husband of 10 years separated. Jody says Jesus walked onto her front porch and argued with her all day long. She said she immediately knew her visitor, saying, I was trying to sustain a career. I had a lifestyle and a family and everything, all on my own, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't. I was pulled way too thin, and so I was just standing on my porch one day, and Jesus Christ walked out and said, she's mine. I just knew it. In the middle of that, in the middle of my spirit and in my soul, I'm like, that's Jesus.
Well, Jody admitted she didn't wait, but ran to her neighbor's house to find out more about Jesus, and she knew very little about him. She says she spent her entire life and career glorifying herself, but now it's time for Jesus to get the glory. And way to go, Jody. Yeah. That's a wonderful story.
That's an encounter you don't forget.
Yeah, you see the risen Savior, it'll change you and change you forever.
Absolutely. I'd love to have heard the arguments.
I wonder what it was about.
I don't know. Well, in other news, Israeli archaeologists are discovering priceless artifacts every day, but there are still treasures that remain hidden.
Well, here's one. Roman soldiers looted the Second Temple all the way back in AD 70. So where are these treasures of the Second Temple today? Take a look. The temple functioned like a bank, storing gold and silver reserves. It's estimated that the currency stored there would be worth billions of dollars today. When Vespasian became emperor, he put his son Titus in charge of crushing the Jewish rebellion. The climax of the war was a brutal 7-month siege of Jerusalem, which left more than 1 million Jews dead. The Romans then looted and burned the temple, a scene described in great detail by the historian Josephus.
Most of the victims were peaceful citizens, weak and unarmed, butchered wherever they were caught. Around the altar, the heaps of corpses grew higher and higher, while down the sanctuary steps poured a river of blood.
After the war, Titus refused the traditional military wreath of victory, saying, "There is no merit in conquering a people forsaken by their own God."
The Romans had a habit of, when they conquer a city, the temple, the main temple of the city, the temple of the Lord of the city, the patron saint, or how will you call it, a god, to remove his statue and to burn the temple. But when they come to the temple, there is no god to bring to the temple in Rome. But what they found were the treasures, and that's why you see it in Titus R as, you know, the booty which is being brought there.
Eyewitnesses say the temple treasure survived for centuries after the fall of Jerusalem. So does it still exist today? And if so, where is it?
Get your copy of Treasures of the Second Temple, available now.
Well, it's a wonderful mystery story of what happened to the treasures of the Second Temple. We know from Roman sources that they set up a temple to house them. They viewed them as trophies. They didn't sell them. They didn't melt them down. They displayed them and did that for centuries. And then Rome was sacked and the treasures are taken. There are written records showing it going to Carthage. And then the Byzantine Empire conquered Carthage, and they all end up back in Constantinople. And then a Christian emperor comes along and he says, these need to go back to Jerusalem. So where are they today? Well, Treasures of the Second Temple will answer that question and open a new mystery of where they might be in Jerusalem. It's yours. The DVD is yours for a donation of any dollar amount. To get it, all you have to do is call 1-800-700-7000. Say, I'd like to have Treasures of the Second Temple. And your gift, your donation, will go into the production costs so we can do more DVDs of the archaeology that's happening in Israel today, as well as the other films we have planned. So your gift will go into CBN Productions to help us produce more movies. So if you'd like it, give us a call, 1-800-700-7000. Terry?
Well, coming up, a mom struggling with a mental illness.
I could swing between periods of highs and lows rather quickly. The highs are great. You have all this energy, and the lows are equally extreme. You don't have energy, you don't have any desire to do anything.
See how she was delivered from bipolar disorder when we come back. Ammie had a marriage that was falling apart. Creditors calling at all hours of the day, and a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. For years, she watched everything unravel, and she felt powerless to stop it.
Ammie Bouwman always accepted that her parents loved her. But when she was 11, they divorced, and Ammie started believing she was unwanted.
They had me so young. I mean, I was the reason they got married. I was a mistake because I had been born. I believed that they were getting a divorce because of me. Those lies started, little seeds were planted in my young self.
Once faithful church members, her parents stopped going after the divorce. But Ammie still prayed and loved God.
I was definitely just trying to do what Jesus wanted me to do. I just wanted to follow him.
Which is how Ammie lived throughout her teens. Then in college, Ammie fell in love and asked God if the boy she liked was the one.
I heard this no, and I was mad. I remember telling the Lord, I don't accept that answer.
They married, and Ammie began pulling away from God.
I think when I made that first decision to say no to God, other decisions came easier after that. I didn't look so much for God's approval as much as I did when I was younger. I left God at church.
Those first years, they were happy. Then they had 2 children just 14 months apart. As a 26-year-old mother with small children, Ammie felt her life start to unravel.
I started to, I think, lose control.
In early 1996, 4 years into their marriage, Ammie went to see a psychologist who diagnosed her as bipolar.
I could swing between periods of highs and lows rather quickly. The highs are great. You have all this energy, and the lows are equally extreme. You don't have energy, you don't have any desire to do anything.
Medication eventually stabilized her moods, but the stigma of being mentally ill added to the self-doubt and rejection Ammie felt as a child.
Now I'm mentally ill. I was never going to get better. I'm unfit. I'm unqualified. I'm not a good wife. My husband had to live with all of that, and that put a really big stress on our marriage.
Out-of-control spending and debt forced them into bankruptcy. Her husband coped by drinking and staying out late most nights. Ammie felt helpless and cried out to God.
And I remember standing in the kitchen, answering calls from creditors, balancing a checkbook that had no money into it. And I finally knew that I needed to do something different. And I said, Lord, I can't do this anymore. I have made such a mess of my life. You need to change something. You need to break in, because I can't do this anymore. I didn't know what to do except take one step at a time with him holding my hand. And it really felt good.
But her marriage was too fractured, and in 2007, Ammie and her husband divorced. Being a single mom with mental issues was challenging, and those feelings of being unloved increased.
I didn't have such extreme highs and lows, but I still questioned myself on everything.
Ammie found a good church and grew closer to God. 2 years later, she married a widower, thinking this new marriage would fill her need to feel loved. But Ammie soon felt she was competing with her husband's memories of his late wife.
I came in with rejection and issues from my first marriage, from the divorce, feeling like I was damaged goods. I was a mistake, that I should have never been born. My parents got married because of me. They got divorced because of me, that I was unqualified and unfit and mentally ill. And now I was never going to be her. He was never going to love me enough.
Seeing her desperation, a friend invited Ammie to a prayer meeting. As the women started praying, Ammie began repenting for things in her life.
Every lie that I had believed about myself, we claimed the truth over that. and then got to my marriage. And I even forgave his first wife. And I broke down, not even knowing that there was this bitterness that I was carrying against a woman that I had never even met before. It was just him renewing me, renewing my spirit, renewing who I was, letting me know how much he loved me. When I walked out of there, I felt like this new person.
She felt God also healed her from her bipolar disorder. Ammie weaned herself off her medication and notified her doctor.
He could see from visit after visit that I was doing exceptionally well. And he said, well, as long as you keep this path that you're doing well, we won't have you take any medication. And I just came on my 6-year anniversary of being healed.
Ammie's transformation improved her marriage, and she and her husband are closer to each other and to God. Today, Ammie loves to share the abundant life that's available when you learn to see yourself the way God sees you.
The word says that God has come to give us life and give it to us to the fullest. I want people to grab onto that. I want them to know that there's hope, that they don't have to be stuck in that mental illness, stuck in that place of brokenness, stuck in that regret, stuck in that depression, that God gives us life, God gives us purpose, and that's what he wants for us. I know who I belong to. I am the daughter of the Most High King.
You know, Jesus said he came to set the captive free. You're not supposed to be stuck in life. You're supposed to have a life that's abundant and filled with joy and with an understanding that you are the child of the Most High King. But God has an enemy, and that enemy wants more than anything to wound the heart of God. If you belong to God and he's your dad and you're made in his image and likeness, what do you think most wounds him? It's when your picture of who he is and who you are in him becomes distorted. So the enemy comes in sly ways. You know, the Bible says he's the father of lies, and that's what happened to Ammie. Very early at a young age, when her parents divorced, that lie was whispered into her heart. You were never wanted. You were the reason that your parents divorced. You were not worthy. You can never be changed. And all throughout her life, as she tried to find that happiness for herself, more lies, more defining her inappropriately, inaccurately. When in fact, through it all, her father was there with her, waiting for those moments when truth could come in and set her free. In your own life today, maybe you're struggling with who you are. Maybe you've been trying to make yourself happy. You know, we all do that. We think if I could just have this or him or her or be doing this for a living, I would be happy, I would be fulfilled. But the truth is, once we accomplish those things or we have those things, we're empty. Because those things were not meant to satisfy us. There's only one thing that satisfies us, and that is a relationship with the God who created us. If you don't know him today, you can start right now. You see, what set Ammie free was she began to declare what all those lies were. She began to spurn them and to say, I'll not have this anymore. And then those women prayed over her and began to speak to her who God said she was. This is why you need to be in the Word, because it's filled with God's promises to you as his child. The journey begins with a single step, and that is simply surrendering. Surrendering all of that effort, all of that trying so hard, all of that lack of reason and belief in the things that really are true and that matter, and saying, Jesus, I just want you. Enough of the rest of this. I want you, I need you, enough of me. And you begin a journey with him. You start to just name the places where you know you've fallen short. He'll reveal things to you. And then ask him to show you who you are in him and how much he loves you, and begin your walk today. Your life will be forever changed. You'll find what it is you're looking for. If you need someone to pray with today, call that toll-free number that's coming up on your screen, 1-800-700-7000. There's a friend on the other end of the line who's discovered what you're looking for, and they're there to pray with you today. Gordon?
Well, still to come, the dark side of sunny San Diego in the lucrative industry of human trafficking.
On average, they were controlling between 4 and 5 persons at a time, making upwards of $100,000, more than $100,000 on each person.
Find out what's being done to stop this epidemic right after this. San Diego is one of the most beautiful cities in the country. It's also a lucrative center of human trafficking. Now, one Christian college and a number of churches are drawing the line. Take a look.
Jessica Kim was just a young girl living in San Diego when the man she trusted the most started to sell her.
My stepfather was the trafficker, and it began at the age of 12.
This beautiful area became her nightmare, and research shows she's not alone. It's hard to believe, but San Diego is not only a vacation paradise, it is a thriving center for commercial sexual exploitation. Traffickers here make more than $800 million a year.
It's phenomenally lucrative.
Sociologist Jamie Gates investigated San Diego trafficking for 3 years as part of a Justice Department study. Gates, a Point Loma Nazarene University professor, co-led a team that spoke with hundreds of victims and more than 50 traffickers to better understand the underground industry.
On average, they were controlling between 4 and 5 persons at a time, making upwards of $100,000, more than $100,000 on each person.
Gates' study shows that added up to almost $1 billion a year. Another surprise, traffickers told investigators it's not that difficult.
The internet makes it very easy to recruit. It makes it very easy to set up a small business doing this kind of work. The place in which this happens now is highly mobile, so it could happen in any neighborhood that has a rental. It can happen in gated communities.
Gates also found an extraordinary link with local high schools. They investigated 20 and found evidence of recruitment in every one.
We had plenty of examples of victims who were being victimized while they were still going to school. So they were at school full-time, and this was something that was being done to them part-time on the side.
Researchers found the average starting age into this life in San Diego is 16. Kim finally got out at age 18 after one failed attempt.
It took a year of planning for me to escape, and it took a year because he had all of my documents.
Her story and the many others Gates uncovered have led to a broad coalition of San Diego churches and law enforcement working together to stem the tide. This type of intervention could help other cities looking for creative approaches. Gates has worked with the San Diego schools to develop a drama-based curriculum. It helps students identify what recruitment looks like.
No More uses a live drama and audience interaction.
Kim is one of the leaders.
If I would have had somebody tell me that what was being done to me was wrong, that there was a way out, that there are people out there that actually cared for me, for my well-being, that cared for me, and that there was help, my whole life would have changed.
She's also a recent graduate, thanks to a new scholarship program at Point Loma specifically designed for survivors. Kimberly Jones, who works with Gates, helped create it after the university wrestled with how to respond to the city's trafficking epidemic.
We just kept hearing the same theme, which is, I want to go to college. And it was such a pipe dream. It was an impossible dream for most people. And so it just was one of those aha moments that we sat around, a small group of us, and said, well, that's something we could do.
More than a dozen students applying to Point Loma right now could be eligible for the scholarship. It provides not just tuition, but other supports like counseling. Jones hopes the program will encourage other victims who, like Kim, need support in their healing and restoration.
It says to all survivors, there are people out here that you matter to.
When somebody gets all the way through to graduation, it's miraculous. You know, there's a real miracle happening there.
I do believe that God is using all of the wrongs that I have been through to make them right. He's making everything new again, everything new.
Reporting in San Diego, Heather Sell, CBN News.
Well, for every success story, let us also consider that this is an ongoing tragedy happening in our own backyards. You look at any major city in America, you're going to find this kind of behavior happening. And it's not far away. Just look for the nearest motel that is, charging on a timed rate, and you're going to find evidence of trafficking. And in the internet age, it can set up anywhere. As you heard, it can be in a gated community. And what are we as Americans going to do to help stop it? Well, one great thing, and I just hats off to that wonderful university, that college that says we're going to give tuition free so a pipe dream can become a real dream, and these kids can have a hope and can have a future. Here's a wonderful word from 2 Corinthians. The Lord is the Spirit, and wherever the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. May you have freedom today. God bless you. We'll see you again.